So listen, there's been a lot of people talking about the heat that is MJF, and people want to know, what was real, what wasn't. Is it a work? Is it a shoot? And you were in some of those pretty tense moments once upon a time with Eric Bischoff. You've seen it all. What'd you think of that?
Well, I know for a fact with me and Eric, it was a shoot. Especially when I came back in Greenville, I was a shoot. Um, we agreed to get along now, but I just can't imagine, and I think I told you this, I can't imagine if it being a work that Tony would ever let a wrestler in a company talk to him like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is. Uh, I don't know whether it's a work or a shoot. I guess we'll find out Wednesday if he's there Wednesday or not, because he's a vital part of he's a very vital part of the show. So I'm sure with the money issue, I'm sure Tony can fix that.
Oh, of course you can. What I like about it is people are talking about it. And when
Yeah,
wrestling fans can gravitate to something, and I mean, you and I were together certain places, we won't say where, this past week, and multiple times people would say, "Hey, what about this MJF thing?"
yeah.
It's what everybody's talking about. So if
The
the idea is let's get people talking, mission accomplished.
the business needs that.
Yes,
Yeah.
it
It
absolutely
used to, I used to be able to go nowhere and hear about wrestling. None, and then they say, well, nobody's watching because of the playoffs. Well, that's it just in, it's insanely difficult to maintain storylines that move people enough to keep it in the mainstream conversation of life.
yeah,
And those storylines are hard to find. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I mean, and that's why those writers, and God bless them, and Vince and Tony and whoever, spend countless hours thinking just like you and I do. You do 5 podcasts a week, I mean, I was doing this, I've been answering questions,
Yeah.
but I'm putting a lot of time personally now into getting ready for this match in Nashville, which is taking not a physical toll on me, but I'm tired all the time. I still make it out for a beer at 5.
Yeah, here let's skip to a wrestling question here. This is from at wrestling question. If you were creating a group and there were only 4 people left on earth, you and Jeff Jarrett are 2 of them, why would Jeff still not be a horseman? That's so great. I love that this is the thing that keeps on giving, man.
I don't know. No, absolutely. Jeff could have been a horseman. Jeff's a hell of a worker and everything. I don't even, it's funny. I don't remember that though. I swear to God, I don't remember Jeff ever being a horseman. And I mean, I can remember all the guys I had in there. I don't remember him ever being one.
Because he wasn't. There it is.
Yeah.
DM wants to know if you never discovered wrestling, what would you have done? And what are you most proud of in your career? And what are you most proud of outside of wrestling?
Outside of wrestling, it would be my 2 daughters,
Well, there you go.
Megan and Ashley, and their success. Um, Personally, boating, fishing, having fun, hanging out with you when you're allowed, hanging out with Dino and Joe. Um, I like being on the road, signing autographs. I'm always going to want to travel. I'm never going to be able to just sit home. So people are stuck with me in that capacity. And I love it's something I'm going to love. I love to watch the wrestling. I like to. Sometimes I want to say things that I get in trouble for, but make comments on things, but it's not worth it. I even call you sometimes and ask you what you think. You say absolutely not. I say, "Can I tweet this guy?" And you say, "No, absolutely not."
I'm just trying
Okay.
to look out.
That's why I can't work Twitter myself.
Amen to that. Roll Tide to that. Let's talk about the other channel since we're talking about current stuff. This past week we saw the unification bout with CM Punk, who was crowned the world champ in May over on the AEW side of things, and the interim champ, John Moxley, went head to head, title for title. And I don't think a lot of folks would have called it. It was a short affair, and Moxley walked out with both belts.
Yeah.
What do you think of the presentation, and what do you expect this weekend?
I was totally shocked. I didn't know it, and I don't know. I'm asking you now: is Punk hurt?
Well, I think it's a storyline injury. I don't know for sure, but
Oh,
as
okay.
far as I know, I think that's going to be the main event this Sunday. But
Oh, it
as
is. Okay, I wasn't sure. I'm not plugged in that much, and I haven't asked. But they got a rating. That's what matters. And they got
yeah,
I think they went over 1 million viewers, and that's got to make Tony happy, and got to make the guys that were involved in the show happy, because all about the rating, guys. Everybody knows what everybody makes and all that, but boy, if you're in it and the ratings no good, then it's once again you're bombarded by social media. So I don't. They got a rating. It was pretty it was pretty pretty aggressive, and I'm a big fan of John Moxley. I don't know Punk that well, but I thought they did great. But and it caught me up totally off guard.
hey, since we're talking about most recent topics, there's been some speculation online that perhaps they're thinking about bringing Braun Strowman back into the fold for WWE. Did you spend any time with Braun? What's your feelings on Braun Strowman as a WWE player again?
Well, I like Braun a lot. I haven't spent any time with. I've seen him once or twice. I think I saw him at WrestleCon, but I haven't spent any time at all with him since he left. We're kind of working on a project together that hasn't really come to fruition yet. Um, it's a promotional scheme that somebody brought to me that it's legitimate, but we just haven't gone to work on it yet. So I don't know. He'll probably have to make a decision whether he wants to do that, because it potentially could be very lucrative, or go back to the WWE. But I like Braun a lot personally.
One more thing we'll talk about in current stuff, then we'll get back to Randy Savage. There was a bit of a debate over the weekend. I don't know that you saw it, but there was a tweet that came out that got everybody talking, and it was from an account that really nobody had, or it wasn't on my radar before. But boy, everybody was paying attention after, talking about Wrestling Banana, and they made a comment or an observation about how things had been evolving in wrestling in the last few months for Will Osprey. Here's the tweet from at Wrestle Banana. Will Osprey has had more five-star matches in 1 month than CM Punk, John Cena, and Kurt Angle have had combined in their entire career. The idea being that over the last month, Will Ospreay's had 4 5-star matches. Meanwhile, Punk, Cena, and Angle collectively have 3. And it didn't take too long before Kevin Nash, a WWE Hall of Famer, found this tweet and responded, "How's his merchandise sales?" And that sort of brought it all back to business. And you were a guy who had just as many 5-star matches as maybe anybody in history, and have an award for the wrestler of the year named after you in the Wrestling Observer. So you received a ton of critical praise, but Kevin Nash brought it back to be not about the critics, but about the fans and about the money, and asked, "How's his merchandise sales?" And it created a little bit of a debate this week on My World with myself and Jeff Jarrett. What would you rather be, underrated or overpaid? Do you want to be a critical success, or do you want to be a financial success? And you probably had to balance that a few times in your career, because you knew you could have better matches with in the Crockett organization than maybe the WWF, but perhaps the WWF would have made you a bigger star. Where do you land on this debate?
Well, I guess at the end of the day, if Kevin's implying that, in other words, he's had great, but he's not selling merchandise, is that what Kevin's implying?
I think the implication is, are you over with the critics or are you over with the fans? The idea
The
being
the fans being the merchandise.
the fans being the merchandise, because
Gotcha.
I think it's probably, I mean, I don't think I'm speaking out of school here. Roman Reigns is probably the biggest star in wrestling today,
Mhm.
and he probably makes the most money and probably sells the most merch and all that sort of thing. However, Will Ospreay, a lot of people would argue, is the best wrestler in the world today, and he has the best quality matches and certainly the most critical success. But as I pointed out to Jeff, I don't know that Will Osprey would swap places with Roman Reigns and vice versa. I don't know that Roman Reigns values being a critical success as much as, over with the
Oh,
fans and
I can
making.
assure you, Will Osprey would trade places with Roman Reigns
Okay. Okay.
with that contract and that income, and now I think he has the flexibility of working part time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming, like you are, that he sells the most merchandise. I'm pretty sure Will would take that, would flip that coin. Um, yeah, I mean, here's the deal. There's a lot of guys that are really, really good performers, and
Yes.
and you're right. They don't sell merchandise because they haven't been around long enough to do it. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
I mean, a month ago, I didn't know who Will Ospreay was, and that's no offense to him. I just didn't know who it was.
Right.
And now, because of all this he's getting, now I make it a point to watch him. But
How about
prior to
that
that,
exchange with Phoenix last week? Him and
huh?
Phoenix on Dynamite. That segment they had last week on Dynamite was outstanding, was it not?
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I'm prior to that. I'm saying I didn't, like 2 months ago. I didn't know who he was,
Right.
so I certainly wouldn't have bought a T-shirt. Um, and for me, and I think Kevin's implying this too, it takes a very strong gimmick. In the imagination and the creation and the creativity that goes behind the T-shirt or the marketing scheme. And very few people are ever going to have the genius of the WWE, meaning the company and whoever does that, to replicate that kind of merchandise. Does that make sense?
It does. I
Um, no. I heard that CM Punk was selling a ton of merchandise when he came
Oh
back.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure, but does he still, or
Well,
was it
I
just
don't
when he
think
came
they
back?
I'm not sure, but I know that he set an all-time record when he returned, and he's been a merchandise monster. But again, I think the implication there in the original tweet was, while CM Punk may be a huge critical success, much like Kurt Angle was, and even John Cena was, they had a larger fan base. They were quote unquote more over with the mainstream, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, Will Ospreay has been making his living on the other side of the world. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but
How old is Will?
that's a great question. Let me look that up. I don't think he's quite 30 yet. Let me
Well,
see.
he's got plenty of time then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if he continues, I
He's
haven't heard
29
him
years old.
talk. I haven't heard him make an interview yet. So, there's a lot of factors that go into selling merchandise, but the biggest factor is having some kind of a gimmick or it's not just about having great matches. I mean, speaking for myself, I never sold a lot of merchandise. I never really had a chance to with WCW, obviously. But I mean, I get a decent royalty check. But I mean, some guys can, like, I'm sure Punk could retire on his royalty checks.
To
Does that
me,
make sense?
the Will Ospreay thing, the reason I brought it up to you is for years and years, you were regarded as the best wrestler in the world. And there was very little debate about that. It was almost accepted as a universal fact. But it was also accepted that Hulk Hogan was probably a bigger star in the 80s.
Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
and I think Kevin Nash was bringing it back to, hey, who would you rather be, the critic's favorite or the fan favorite?
Yeah,
And
I understand that remark. Well, Kevin's a very smart guy. I mean, everything that Kevin comments on. I mean, I put a lot of thought into it. Kevin is like an intellect.
mhm,
Does that make sense?
yeah,
I mean, but when I'm with Kevin, I spend more time talking about LeBron James than I do wrestling.
yeah,
I mean, we don't even talk about wrestling. We just talk about sports, especially with football coming up and the University of Tennessee sucking it as usual.
they're terrible. They're terrible. Let's get back on track and talk about the
Who
WWF
the hell?
Ignite. Let's talk about the other channel since we're talking about current stuff. This past week we saw the unification bout with CM Punk, who was crowned the world champ in May over on the AEW side of things, and the interim champ, John Moxley, went head to head, title for title. And I don't think a lot of folks would have called it. It was a short affair, and Moxley walked out with both belts.
Yeah.
What do you think of the presentation, and what do you expect this weekend?
I was totally shocked. I didn't know it, and I don't know. I'm asking you now: is Punk hurt?
Well, I think it's a storyline injury. I don't know for sure, but
Oh,
as
okay.
far as I know, I think that's going to be the main event this Sunday. But
Oh, it
as
is. Okay, I wasn't sure. I'm not plugged in that much, and I haven't asked. But they got a rating. That's what matters. And they got.
yeah,
I think they went over 1 million viewers, and that's got to make Tony happy, and got to make the guys that were involved in the show happy, because all about the rating, guys. Everybody knows what everybody makes and all that, but boy, if you're in it and the ratings no good, then it's once again you're bombarded by social media. So I don't. They got a rating. It was pretty it was pretty pretty aggressive, and I'm a big fan of John Moxley. I don't know Punk that well, but I thought they did great. But and it caught me up totally off guard.
um, speaking of hardware, there were flying chairs and everything else this past week after the AEW show. Did you have a chance to catch any of the AEW show, and have you heard any of the
I,
rumor and innuendo?
I have. I've been watching this from afar. It's very entertaining. If it's entertainment the fans want, that's entertainment they're getting, and Punk has given them a lot of it.
Have you spent any significant time with Punk? I know you've had a little bit
No,
of time with him in WWE.
but we just barely got to say hi.
Right.
Isn't that funny? I I never understood it. I mean, I was long gone when all the bad blood seemed to appear between he and Hunter, and then the lawsuit with the doctor and all that. I wasn't aware of any of that. I just saw it, of course, like everybody else on social media, and you know, I always sided with Hunter on that because I didn't know the other guy. So, but he's creating excitement now, and if he's not afraid to say it and afraid to, I like the way he said, "I'll walk down the hall and be ready." I mean, that's Harley Race talking right there. I don't know if he's that tough, but I love that. that. That's old time stuff right there. It is. you don't got you got a problem with me, you can find me right there in the building.
Well, they did. They found him, and
Yeah,
I think the whispers are there's a whole bunch of suspensions, and a lot of
yeah.
folks are gonna have hurt feelings and a lot of fallout, and maybe there's third parties involved now, and it's gonna be an interesting time. And I'm curious from your perspective,
It's got to be a divided locker room.
to say the least. Do you remember being? I mean, we've always heard about personal issues, right? So maybe it was a Jacques Rougeau and a Dynamite Kid, or it was a Bret Hart and a Shawn Michaels. But do you remember there being ever like, I mean, Dave Meltzer described this as a melee. It wasn't one or two guys, it was several guys, and there's fists being thrown, and people are biting each other, and chairs are flying, and now maybe
Really?
there's black eyes. It's a mess.
That's serious, huh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh wow, I didn't
I,
realize that.
I've heard more than I should probably share here, but I do want to ask,
No,
do
why would you
you
hold back? For what
well,
reason?
stuff in confidence.
For
So,
somebody else's podcast?
oh no, no, no. Yeah, that's the thing. I'm in a bad spot because I'm Switzerland, Rick. So if I say anything bad about this company or that company,
But
then
you won't be saying anything bad if you just report what happened.
well, I wasn't there. But I hear things and people say things, and you never
Yeah.
know what's real and what's not. But I'm curious. You've been in a lot of locker rooms. Do you remember there ever being a melee, like something described as
Oh
that?
yeah, God, yeah. I've seen some in the old days. It happened all the time.
Give us an example of one time you saw just a real Pier 6 brawl in the backstage area.
You mean in one? There's two kinds of brawls.
Okay.
There's one where a guy will start a fight because he knows it's going to get broken up
Okay.
because there's so many people around. And I would think this is probably the situation with these guys. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's not like they're walking in the dressing room to talk to Harley Race or Blackjack. That would take a lot of thinking and a lot of talking to walk in to talk to Harley Race about something they don't like as an individual,
Right.
or Jack Mulligan, or Jack Briscoe. I mean, Ole Anderson calling out Jack Briscoe, he still hasn't showed up. Oli. You know what I mean? It's easy to say it if you can't be found, but I actually thought it was pretty cool if what I'm told, and I don't know anything about who won the fight or who did what, but the fact that Punk said, I think if I'm not wrong, he said, I'm here in the building if you want to find me, right? Something like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
I like that. And it's probably not what Tony or anybody wants to hear, but if he has the courage to say that and he feels that strongly about somebody, um, hey, I don't blame him for saying it. I don't. I mean, I like Omega and I like the Young Bucks, so I don't know what the heat could possibly be. They seem to me like really easy guys to get along with, but I don't know them that well, and they're all. It's for me. It's how they treat me as an individual,
Right.
and they treat me great. I had a chance to be around Kenny a lot when he wrestled Manny in Mexico, and really got to know him pretty good. And the Young Bucks have always been awesome. So I don't know, and CM Punk, I don't know him, so. But he said it, and I don't know anything about Colt Cabana. That's really, I have no idea what's going on there. But he seems to be under Punk's skin a little bit, huh?
I think that's fair to say. I think that's fair to say.
I know nothing about that.
Well, let's
I
talk
fed him, and I decided not to feed him. That's pretty good.
We're doing Ask Nate Anything.
Wish I could have said that in divorce court.
You've had plenty of opportunities there, that's for sure.
I knew I gave you a home run there, brother.
Well, listen, maybe you can say it next time. There's
Okay.
always hope for next time. We're going to bounce around, talk about 100 different subjects today.
Oh my God. As did Henning and Race together. Larry and Harley. Can you imagine jumping on a Harley? Can you imagine getting in a ring with Harley Race and Larry Henning? I had that experience. Get up, kid. Get up, kid. He's
The
just playing
people's
with you.
champ.
He's just playing with you, kid. Don't let him break you.
Tremendous.
You think they can do that now?
No.
What do you think would happen? Just as an example, if all that melee was going on in the locker room and Harley Race broke down the door,
I think everyone would stop what they were doing.
everyone would have gone, ah! Wyatt Earp's here, boys. He'd have gone, kids, settle down before I have to hurt one of you. That's the way it would have been. Same with Jack Mulligan or Dick Slater. I've seen some tough guys come through the door.
A different time for sure.
Yeah. Different time, the same business.
Bill Robinson wants to know, what do you call the move when you go upside down in the corner? You know, the up and over. What do you call that?
Oh, the Ray Stevens bump.
Okay.
Ray, I learned it from Ray. And then Sean got where he could do it better.
I want to know what you think of some of today's top wrestlers, because there's a few wrestlers you've really never evaluated. And, you know, as the greatest performer of all time, I think your opinion is the gold standard for how these guys should be rated. Never mind that 5-star crap. I want to hear what Ric Flair has to say. So let's start with Kenny Omega, who just dropped the AEW World title at their pay-per-view to Hangman Page. Kenny's had, you know, all these great bots in Japan with the kata. He's been the top guy in AEW pretty much since he got there. What's your take on Kenny Omega as a worker? What are his pros and cons?
I don't see a weakness. And after being in Mexico with him, when he wrestled Andrade, I became even more impressed, because seeing someone on TV, being around him, meeting him socially is one thing. And he's a wonderful kid. But I think the fact that you mentioned he's wrestled everybody, every style around the world. And that's what it takes to really become a top guy in this business. You have to have had different opponents with different styles. And I mean, I put he and AJ Styles and Randy Orton. I mean, they're pretty much. I mean, there's a lot of good ones, but I put those three pretty much in a class of their own.
Well, you bring up
Like I take the Young Bucks and the Usos as my two favorite teams. I mean, they're not a different style than Tully and Arn, but for the way wrestling is put together today and the way the guys are taught to entertain, I think the Usos are phenomenal and the Young Bucks they do some stuff I've never seen. So
yeah, I agree with
respect to all of them.
I agree with your evaluation of the teams, and we'll get back to them in a minute. But let's stick with Omega for a second, because I agree. He's kind of a rare breed, a disappearing breed, because he has worked everywhere. You get a lot of wrestlers now who only work in one promotion, in one country, one style. They don't work all that many matches per year. And it kind of, I don't want to say it stunts their development, but it's a different kind of development.
It's totally different. And it's unfair, really, to judge a lot of these kids because they haven't had the opportunity to wrestle anywhere, as an example, at NXT or for the WWE. And how many different opponents are you allowed to have? It takes 5-6 years of being there, and then of having so many different opponents. That's how you improve as a performer. And certainly the people, if you're really good at what you do, they learn a lot from being in the ring with you and from your experience.
One thing where I was a little, not doubtful, but I had questions about Omega when he came to AEW. Japan's a totally different style, very physical, very athletic. The matches are all very long, and it's a different psychology. But he came to America and adapted seamlessly to all that, didn't he?
Yeah, and being the fact that he survived Japan will tell you how tough he is. Because if you're wrestling over there, it's not like it was in the 70s and 80s by any means, but the kids are tough. They're brought up tough. They go through these dojos. I mean, there's nobody over there holding their hand. If you want to break into business, even to this day over there, you're going to pay the price. And I mean, they're going to test you mentally and physically. One of the greatest interviewers of all time. I mean, no, I'm going to argue this with anybody. Is Arn Anderson.
No question.
He never raised his voice, but everything Arn said and everything that came out of his mouth, brother, you looked at it and went, holy shit, this guy is dead on. Only two.
Now, Nate, here's where we're going to get some headlines.
If they want to turn Cody Rhodes heel, they need to let Arn talk.
Well, I can't wait for Cody.
And let Arn get serious. I'm serious.
Well, I can't wait for Cody to get like a second win there, because I think very highly of him.
Oh, I do too.
And I don't know if he's faded or just some of the stuff he's done and they've done haven't worked with him lately, but I am a big fan there. And I agree with you. If anybody can turn Cody Rhodes heel, it's Arn. And Arn shouldn't turn heel on Cody, nor Cody on him. They should turn heel together.
No, they should do it together. That's
Right.
what I'm saying. And let Arn do some of the talking. The enforcer. Shit, I mean, Arn might be the best interviewer they have over there, and he gets a little bit of time, but he may be the best interviewer they have there.
How about when he did the interview about pulling the gun?
Huh?
Arn did an interview where he said he was going to like take out a Glock.
I didn't hear it.
Oh yeah, it made some headlines, to be sure. Now, I want to talk about two guys that AEW brought in. They brought in Bryan Danielson and CM Punk, who were certainly stars by any definition of the word. But what have they contributed to AEW, and where are their careers at as workers?
Well, if I'm looking at the ratings, I don't know what they've contributed to. Yeah, certainly, as you said, both big stars in the business. Both have had a lot of success. But I don't know what I don't know how to answer that question, because all you can do, as we do with football or any other show, is look at the ratings. And if the ratings are indicative, I mean, I think they would go up, but to me, that show should never do less than 1.1 million. If they get there once and bring in all this talent and go back, then there's something wrong.
Yeah, I agree. And you and I have talked about this before, but I want to bounce this off you here on the podcast.
That doesn't mean it's no one person's fault. But
I'm
saying, if you have that much talent on your roster and you reach that goal and go, oh my God, we've hit the 1 million. for myself, I would be. I mean, we all live to look at the ratings, especially our segment. What our segment do? How do we do? How long were we? What were we on the crossover? I mean, it's an insane business that we compete in with ourselves mentally, and they compete in right now because they're in the business. But if I'm looking at the ratings in the show, I don't know what the breakdown or who does what or anything. You just say all this talent, they need to be at a 1-1, I think, and never go back and build from there.
100% agree. And to be fair, I don't know Danielson's quarter hours. I know Punk's quarter hours have done very well since he got there. But you and I have talked about this off the air, and I want to bounce it off you here on the podcast. I really like AEW. It's the only wrestling program I watch from beginning to end every week, the Wednesday night show. But I got to say, the reason I watch it and the reason I think it caught fire out of the gate is because of the younger guys and the guys who weren't overexposed on WWE TV. I watch AEW to see MJF, Jungle Boy, Sammy Guevara, Adam Page, Darby Allin, and and guys like FTR that didn't get their due in WWE, the Young Bucks who never worked WWE. And I think to recycle guys from WWE, no matter how talented they may be, is steering the promotion away from what, like I said, got it out of the gate so quickly.
Yeah, Mark, I don't know the answer. I watch, as you know, because I have a daughter in the business, I watch not only to watch the product, but I watch to see, what she's competing with or what our company, the WWF or WWE rather, or AEW. I like to watch and see because it is competition. Like I was switched back and forth yesterday between Seattle and Green Bay, and then whatever other good game was on. You know what I mean? You switch back and forth, but it's a comparison. It has to be. There's nothing else. And as the fans, I'm sure they're going. They all have their favorites. I feel like social media, which is something we never had, that was so demanding and so relevant to what these kids and how they think and how they perform and how they feel about themselves as individuals. It's overwhelming sometimes. You can't make everybody happy. And if there's one negative comment or one negative opinion, it's just somebody trying to get attention. You know what I mean? And they come at you under not even a real name. Give me your name. Who's they? You have an argument with your wife, right? They said this about you. I said, who's they? They said it. Who's they? Just tell me who they is. Yeah, hello, they. Hello, they. Well, you were doing this. How do you know that? They told me. Well, really? Okay. Well, I've had 4 wives that all said, you were doing this. I've never admitted to anything. And I go, they. Who are they?
I'd like to get you and all your wives.
No comment from you.
I'd like to get you and all your wives on Twitter together. How would that be?
Yeah, I love that. Woo, and I can tell you this, and then I'm going to remarry. There's only one Jim Dandy out there, brother.
Now, you mentioned the Young Bucks before, and one thing I want to say about AEW is I think they've revived tag team wrestling to a degree. You got FTR, you got the Lucha Brothers, you got the Young Bucks, you got Santana and Ortiz. And it reminds me of like the 80s in the NWA when you had tag teams that got together, stayed together, wrestled like tag teams as opposed to just 4 guys in the ring wrestling, and really became identified together. And I think that's a good thing. I think every promotion needs different stuff. And it's hard to say, it's hard to believe, but tag team wrestling is now different stuff. It's off the main road.
Yeah, well, but it's still it's exciting. For me, and this is just my opinion, I like it when they keep it down to 6 people. When you get 8 people, I mean, nobody. I'll make a statement that I said the other day publicly. So if you look at all the guys that have come in, if you take Bryan, if you take CM Punk, whoever else come in, I guess, and Adam Cole. The one that's gotten over the best is Adam Cole. If I'm watching the show, because he's had marquee matches, he's been in the right spot, and he's not put in a situation where there's 35 guys in the ring because nobody can get over. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
The ring is so full of talent that you're going like this, and if I don't know who they are, the audience doesn't know who they are. It's impossible for a person to become a star in a scenario like that.
Well, yeah, I'm in total agreement. In fact, I'll go one step further. I don't even like 6-man tags, Nate. I think a regular tag match, with rare exceptions, unless you're going to settle a feud like in War Games or AEW Stadium Stampede. I think to go past 4 guys in the ring, like you said, the guys become unidentifiable. And
If you have 30 minutes, we did 6-mans forever in the 80s, and even 5-man. But you can't. You have to have 30 minutes, not 10, because nobody gets over. Does that make sense?
no,
Tully and Arn. I mean, before it was Nick Bockwinkel and Ray Stevens, and then it was Tully and Arn, and I didn't see anybody. And I've seen a lot of really good teams. Oh, I take that back. I thought when James Storm and Bobby Roode were together at TNA, they were one of the best teams I'd seen. And they split, I can't remember why. But to see these guys come along now, and then to see Jimmy and Jay, who weigh 240 pounds, they're big kids, legit athletes, bounce around and take the bumps with Rey Mysterio and his son. And the next day, wrestle with that team that left the WWE that's with, they're really good too. The ones that like Tully and Arn so much.
FTR.
The guys from Charlotte.
Yeah, FTR.
Yeah, FTR. Yeah, I think those guys are great too. And there's an example. Like me, I had an average body. I never had a good body. Those guys have got an average body, but they can work. So if you want work and skill and talent, boom. There's a lot of guys that might look better. Just like there were a lot of guys that looked a lot better than me. Oh my God, I'm wrestling Kerry Von Erich. I'm wrestling Luger. I'll give you an example. List Hogan, all these guys with better bodies, but I knew who I was then. If I wasn't having some period or lapse of self-confidence, but I never thought about it. And those kids just go out there and they just perform, and they're great. And they're never going to look like Roman, who is, but they perform at a very high level. The Usos, man, when they're healthy, look at the stuff they do. And they're doing Rey Mysterio stuff, and they weigh 240 pounds.
Well, let me tell you one complaint I do have about AEW, and it's probably going to be perceived as nitpicking, and maybe it is, but their roster is so packed. They have so many guys, and they add more all the time, that I don't get to see the guys I want to see as often as I'd like. Like, you take a team like FTR, they might wrestle on TV 10 times a year. And that certainly is not like the old days when you would literally see Tully and Arn all the time.
I get that. But see, once again, Mark, that's why, people complain, not complain. People say, well, it's the same thing on Raw every night, same thing on SmackDown. Well, if you're the champion, they're the best. They got to be on TV.
Right.
So I don't know, I don't know how Tony does that over there. I know that with the WWE, if you're really good, you're going to be on TV.
Right.
And that just it. And people complain about not having the opportunity or that they're being held back. Well, you're never going to be held back if you're better. Does that make sense? I will never
absolutely.
I will never buy that as an excuse. If you're better than somebody that's on the show and you walk and knock on his door and say, Mr. McMahon, I would like a chance to prove that I'm better than he or she, he'll give it to you. He's not going to hold anybody back. In a lot of their minds, they're better, but they're not. But it's good to have self-confidence and self-esteem and feel good about yourself. But he's not holding anybody back. There's no political notion that people are being held back. I don't agree with that.
You mentioned working with Hulk.
And I'm sure the same applies with Tony. If you're good, Tony's going to see it.
Oh, no. I think Tony's done a brilliant job, actually, creatively. I just think he has 20 pounds of sugar for a 10-pound bag. I don't think there's any way to get all his talent on TV. And I can't help but wonder if guys who feel like they've been underutilized, if he might ultimately chase them to WWE when contracts come up.
He might, but WWE, for whatever anybody thinks or tries to judge them or thinks bad about them, he's 2 steps ahead of the game. And unless you are really special and you walked out that door or been released or left on bad terms or whatever, you've got to be really special to get back in that door, because they don't need you. They don't need negative commentary. They don't need people walking away complaining they didn't get this, they didn't get that, they didn't get this. If they were good enough, they would have gotten it. The whiners, The whiners just need to go home and whine. Tell their wife a story. Go for a boat ride. Tell yourself, ride down the road with somebody like we used to do in the old days and knock everybody in the goddamn show. But don't do it online, okay?
Yeah, we did do that, didn't we?
Yeah. Are you kidding me? Rode down the road. I knocked everybody at work with. Are you kidding me?
Now, another tag team that is my cup of tea in every way is FTR.
Yes, absolutely.
They have high regard for Arn and Tully.
Yep.
They work like Arn and Tully. They work just the style I like in tag team wrestling. And one thing I said on Twitter, and Dax Harwood said it was the tweet of the week. He said I was the smartest guy on Twitter that day. That's before he blocked me, but that's another story altogether.
Who's that?
Dax Harwood. Dax, he blocked me. I can still get heat, Nate, no question. But I think he's a good guy, and I think they're a great team. I actually think that he and I think wrestling a lot alike. It's just that he sees as a holy pursuit, and I don't quite. But they wrestle like a tag team. And a lot of times today in tag team wrestling, Nate, and the Bucks don't do this, and FTR doesn't do this, and the Usos don't do this. But sometimes it's just 4 guys wrestling instead of tag team wrestling. Do you understand what I mean? And FTR always wrestles like a tag team, don't they?
Yeah. No, and going back to their run in the WWE, those guys and the Usos had some matches that were unbelievable. And they took that same level of skill, which is immense, over, and they had the great matches with the Young Bucks. I mean, those guys, once again, as I mentioned before, Arn, Tully, myself, we were never Mr. America, right? But we can all work. And those kids can work.
Yeah, I love watching their matches. They can adapt to any style. They can do the Lucha Brothers. They can do the Young Bucks. And they're so believable. I think it's fair to say, and this is no knock on anybody else, Nate, FTR are the most believable tag team of the day and have been for quite some time.
Yeah, I'd say that them are the Usos. I'm really big on the Usos, but I can't see the difference between the two.
No, and certainly I'm not even comparing the two. The Usos are great. We've talked about them, but
I think they're great. Yes,
I'll tell you a feud I'm looking forward to if they do it right is Punk and MJF.
Yeah.
Their promo battle, even though they did a couple things like let me ask you this, Rick, as kind of a side note. On TBS and TNT, you're allowed to swear X amount, okay? And they use shit, and they had Punk had the fans chanting needle dick at MJF. The Inner Circle guys always flip the bird. I just don't think that's necessary. And I think if you're trying to grow your audience, it can be kind of productive. I think if you're trying to grow your audience, you don't have to be PG-13, but you shouldn't be hard R either. I think you're super serving the fans you already have when you do that, the hardcore ones, but I think you already got them. What's your take on the profanity that, again, I think there's too much in AEW?
Well, they're doing the exact opposite as WWE. So, and Vince is not going to move off his PG-13 or his PG, whatever. They're allowed to say a word here and there, but I think I'm sensing that in the people that run the company, Vince and whoever else, that they are chasing down the advertising couple of the advertisers that won't allow that kind of conversation to be had.
I got to be honest, Rick. I can't think of one advertiser in the world that would be crazy about needle dick being chanted on national TV.
No, I can't either. But everybody's got a different thought process. I'm not the booker. I'm not in charge of it.
No. Hey, what they want to do is what they want to do, and it's a great product. It's been very successful. I don't. Let me ask you this: if back when you did promos, if you had the option to swear or didn't or not, what would you have done?
I never did swear.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, I didn't.
And finally, let's do one more here, and this is.
I tell you something I was going to say about Punk. Now, Punk had a hell of a match with that young man. I can't think of his name the other night, right?
Oh, with Lee Moriarty.
Yeah.
It was a Pittsburgh kid who was not bad. You're right. That was a good match.
Yeah, very good match. But I think that sometimes that in their attempt to keep him undefeated, they put him in a scenario where he's out there too long. Even though he made that kid and they had a great match, I would have shortened it up because, I mean, if he's their biggest star, you know, no matter how talented, is it Moriarty?
Yeah, Lee Moriarty. He's
Yeah,
very talented. You don't need to make him. Lee Moriarty's not going to be a headliner for you probably ever.
Well, I don't know the answer to that because I don't know enough about him. But I don't think that Punk needs to be out there that long. I think they can have just as good a match in a shorter period of time.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. One more tweet before we wrap this up.
Especially as he's heading into a match with MJF.
Right. Now, once again, Nate, wrestlers are on the move. Jeff Hardy says he's going to AEW. That's no surprise, but that's going to have major impact, isn't it?
Absolutely. In my mind, Jeff Hardy is still one of the top stars in the business.
Now, how would you use him when he gets there? Is there more value with him and Matt as singles or as a tag team?
Well, Matt's involved in that really interesting storyline I like a lot myself with Andrade. So I don't know if you break that up or not, or they've done well as a tag team. I think what makes it so nice is they can do both. I'd bring Jeff in as a single right now, rather than put him with Matt, and get a big run out of Jeff as a single. Then you can put him back together. You can turn him. I mean, Jeff is a very, very talented young man, guys. Very talented. You guys know that.
No, I 100% agree, and I agree with your plan too, Rick. I would bring Jeff in as a single initially.
Mhm.
I'd leave Matt doing his thing with his gang, with Andrade, and then you could always put Jeff and Matt together later on.
I mean, can you see Jeff and Matt wrestling the Young Bucks? Come on. It's a main event I'm going to watch.
Well, they had that.
Or Jeff against Kenny Omega. Come on.
No question. And the Hardys and Young Bucks had that brief feud in a Ring of Honor. I want to say they only had one match. It got cut off because they went back to WWE and surprised at that WrestleMania. But yeah, I think Jeff's like, I have complained on this show that AEW is bringing in too many guys, and I stand by that. But you always want to bring in Jeff Hardy. He's one of the very top guys.
Jeff Hardy, you bring in a main eventer from day one.
Right.
He should never even have a preliminary match.
Right. I agree. He should go right.
I'd call out the champion. I'd call out Daniel Bryan. I'd call out Punk. I mean, I would just, I have my ways of what my ideas of, but Jeff is not a guy you come and bring along slowly. He's a star. Day one, he walks out the door, the roof blows off. Put him in a match where he can demonstrate how good he is, and then give him a win over a top guy right away.
Amen. Could not have put it better.
I'm here. If you got a problem with it, move me on.
Now, another guy who's leaving WWE.
He's not arrogant like that, but that's how I'd handle him.
You're right. Neither Hardy is, neither Matt nor Jeff is arrogant like that.
No.
Do you think that's ever hindered them? Sometimes you got to be that way, don't you?
Well, they're easy to do business with, and that I think that's a test for their longevity. I mean, you know, I'm certain they have both been put in positions that they didn't want to be in, but they're so talented, they pulled it off. So,
and they're two of the greatest guys I've ever met too. They don't roll over,
absolutely,
but they want to get along, don't they?
Absolutely.
Michael McClanahan says, "Who is one modern day wrestler you believe would have excelled in the territory system, and who is one wrestler from the territories you believe would have translated well to a modern day audience?"
Wow.
A modern day wrestler who could have worked in the territory system, that feels like, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like we've seen a guy like Moxley go out and do that because he's been working independent shots and he seems to enjoy that and be fun. And you've spent some time at the bar with him. Maybe he would have dug that.
Yeah, absolutely. John absolutely would have loved that. He's a rugged guy and he doesn't mind hanging out all night long. Either does his wife, as I got detained off a flight in Boston after hanging out with him all night. We drank Bloody Marys at the bar in the Hill until 4 o'clock in the morning. I went to the airport at 5 for a 7 o'clock flight. TSA was not my friend. Oh God, but yeah, John Moxley. I think Roman would have could have handled
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Any of the guys that have family, I would venture to say Randy could have done it very easily. I think anybody that grew up second generation or third generation like Randy, they know how tough it was an incredibly tough and insensitive life, but we had fun.
Is there one wrestler from back then who would have worked really well today? Modern wrestling.
Me.
I was gonna say Bruiser Brody. It feels like he was such a figure, it's such a character.
Oh yeah, no, he was. These guys today, that's nothing. Bruiser did what he wanted to do. He did not read promos. He did not. He didn't talk about what was going to go on in the ring. That was his agenda. Then man, could he kick ass? And he was an intimidating guy. He liked me. I'm very fortunate, but make no mistake, he did well in Japan because he didn't have to take any orders. But every territory he worked in, he didn't stay around long. I don't think he was ever in WWE.
Yeah, I don't think that would have even if he was, I don't think that would have lasted very long.
No. I would get Cesaro and get him a new manager and make him a heel. From day one. If he had a talking place and was going to be a heel, he'd be phenomenal.
How about you?
To manage him, I'd love it.
That'd be great. That's just, I'm talking here off the top of my head, Rick, but that'd be a great combination.
Yeah, and then you work with him on little things that make him nasty. You've never seen him be nasty. You take a guy with his skill, his strength, and teach him how to be nasty. Just little tricks of the trade, and he'd be really hot.
You're right, boy.
Because people know how strong, how talented he is. Can you imagine putting that giant swing on somebody? I mean, if I was managing him, I would call Tony Khan out to the ring, and I'd knock him down from behind and have Cesaro give him a giant swing and put him in the hospital for a month.
Now, AEW also signed William Regal. What's his value, Rick, as a non-wrestler? Obviously a great promo.
Well, I didn't even know that he had gone till I saw him last week. My first reaction is, what did Hunter say? Good Lord. They were such close friends. I don't know. It caught me off guard, but I certainly am happy for Steve Regal. He's got a great promo, and he brings a lot of authenticity to the product. I mean, he's an authentic guy. He's a man's man. The guys respect him, and the words that come out of his mouth, his promo last week was fantastic.
Yeah, and then he apologized on Twitter because he went too long. That's being a real pro, isn't it?
I wouldn't have him. I would never apologize on Twitter.
Well, I'd never apologize if I'm William Regal for talking because everybody wants to hear him talk.
It was really good.
Now, Regal's also a great teacher of wrestling. Had a big role in that regard in NXT, and he can verbalize it. He makes teaching it accessible and easily understood, and I think there's a strong value in that, especially with the young guys for AEW. If you go to him, he'll make it clear what should happen.
Exactly, and he probably can still do it.
Oh, no question.
I'm not sure what his health status is, but physically, I imagine he could still probably do it if he had to. He's a great guy.
I think in short spurts, yeah, he could. I know he had a few health problems back.
No, I don't mean wrestle in the ring on a show, but wrestle with the guys he's teaching.
That's what I meant too. Yeah, I think he could too. He had some health problems in 2018, but he says he's, totally over those. So I think he's a great addition. And like I said, I will always have time to listen to him talk.
What were his health issues in 2018?
I not specific. I'm not sure, but just he referred to them on Twitter, and that's his business. But he says he's 100% now. Now, in that vein, Rick, would you be a good teacher? How many wrestlers have you had direct impact on? I think you probably would be.
Well, I have a lot of impact on wrestlers that you're familiar with. I mean, the guys I helped along the way. I mean, I basically was started with Ricky, and then I went from Ricky to a couple of different guys, and then Sting came along, and I had the privilege of working with him a lot when he was first starting, Luger. I think in singles matches, I was able to help Ricky Morton, who had just been a tag team guy most of his career. No, first of all, if someone wants to learn, I can talk to anybody. It's the guys that think they know too much that I have a hard time working with it, or even like I've said it 4,000 times. If somebody asks my advice, and I give them my advice, and they walk over to somebody their age group or somebody else that knows nothing about wrestling, to ask their opinion, then they've lost me.
Yeah, and
Or
we've known.
or if they turn on the internet to have somebody that just that's what it is. But the internet, unfortunately, it is brutal how much attention the guys and the girls pay to the internet and comments that are made.
Well, that dates back to WCW. That's where it all started, when we started doing all the internet stuff there.
Yeah.
I mean, we had that audio show, and the guys in charge paid attention to it, way too much attention to it.
Yeah, pretty soon everybody's great or everybody's terrible. I mean, it's fans just reacting, and fans, of course, they're going to interact. They're right, and it's their privilege. But that should never have a wrestler or put a wrestler or help him determine how successful he is in what he's doing. Let talk to Vince McMahon, talk to John Laurinaitis, talk to Tony Khan, go ask Arn Anderson. I mean, ask people that know. Tully Blanchard. I mean, there's a lot of guys around that are available that can give a good young wrestler some good advice.
Who would you say is the best teacher of wrestling you've encountered? I have my idea, but you go.
The best teacher of wrestling that I've ever encountered.
Yep.
Going back to when I started?
Anytime from then till now, Nate.
The best teacher. I can tell you who gave me a lot of advice was Nick Bockwinkel.
I believe that. I knew him briefly.
Nick, I don't know. There's two ways to look at it. When I broke in, I needed Vern Gagne and Ray Robinson to make me tough, to understand what I was about to go through the next 50 years. If I hadn't had my ass kicked by them 3 or 4 times, more like 10 times, I would have never survived the career that I've been involved in. You have to get the first part is true. That's so much the case now because it's a different story. But for me personally, if I hadn't had my ass handed to me and humbled to the nth degree, I don't think I would have made it to where I am today. So there's different ways to teach you. You can learn by listening, learn by actions that you stuff to learn. Oh, I'll tell you who else was a great teacher of wrestling. God, Fit Finley.
Yep, that was my pick right there.
Yep, Fit Finley with the girls is just phenomenal. Fit is he's got more patience than any man I live with. To sit there with the girls all day long and articulate, and the girls ask questions and he answers them. I mean, I've watched him. Dave is great.
Yeah, that's my pick. Just everybody I've talked to, including Ashley, your daughter.
Yeah.
Fit Finley. I mean, the job he's done with the women.
It took me a while to think of that when I knew there was somebody I was missing. Dave Finley.
Well, I've had too many women, Nate, including your daughter, including Sasha. When I've interviewed them, Natalia just say that Fit Finley is the reason that women's division grew so fast and became so good.
I can believe that. He certainly had a lot to do with it.
Now, let's talk about the new AEW World Champion, Hangman Page. He's only 30 years old, never worked WWE, and I think he's the real thing. I wrote in a blog today, and by the way, I'm doing a every Monday wrestling blog now at WXDX.com if people want to check it out. But Hangman Page at 30 is a real main eventer, and I don't think there's too many of those. I think we overestimate how many there are.
Oh, for sure. I watch his stuff. I've liked him since day one, and I think him being a champion now is long overdue. I think it's great. And once again, I only know him to say hi, and I've shaken his hand a couple of times, but he's respectful. But he works incredibly hard in the ring. He's got a really good looking gimmick. He's a very handsome young man, and I think he should have a hell of a run with the title.
Well, him and Kenny had just the lights out match at Full Gear. Just unbelievable. And, Kenny does that, but, Hangman was an equal partner in that, I hasten to add. And,
hey, make no mistake, it always takes two to tango, man.
No question. No question. But I got to say this about Hangman, Nate. You know what he reminds me of is, and not exactly, but there's a little bit of Stan Hansen in him. He does the cowboy gimmick. He does the lariat. He's not nearsighted, and he can hear, and he won't kill you. But there's a little bit of Stan Hansen in him, isn't there?
A little bit of Barry Windham, too.
Yes. Great call. Yeah, and obviously there's no...
He's not nearly stiff enough to be compared to Stan Hansen.
I know. Well, like I said...
Let's get realistic. I'm still trying to get the blade out of my forehead from one of his clotheslines.
Well, it's like Terry Funk said to me about Stan Hansen once. He said, he's nearsighted and he can't hear.
Yeah.
So, you're just in for a treat. He doesn't mean to do it, but he's going to kill you.
Yeah. Well, wrestle him for an hour sometime and tell me about it. So if you want to be the real world champion, until you wrestled Hansen and Brody in Japan individually for an hour, you are not the world champion.
and
I've had that pleasure about 5 to 6 times.
Now,